I think a lot of young people think that they're going to live forever. They just act as if they're going to live eternally. That's a good thing. Because then you're just enjoying what's going on. It's a good thing. And I remember that was what it was like for me when I was young, including the day when I was 18 years old and I was working on a construction job. I was lumping a load of lumber down a hillside in this construction of a house. And all of a sudden, right past my ear, a bullet. I'll never, ever forget the sound of that bullet. Zip, it, not more than a foot away from my ear. And no, it wasn't the ear that's messed up. That's another story. I have different versions of the story about what happened to this ear. And if you're curious, I'll tell you one of them. Anyway, but no, it was past this ear. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's really strange. And it hit a retaining wall across the street from the construction job, and a neighbor found the bullet, and we figured out pretty much where it came from and called the cops, and the cops investigated but couldn't figure out who shot the gun, right? Appeared to be a random thing. Anyway, I just thought, well, that was interesting. And then I went about my business like, but when I told my mother about it, she completely freaked out. She's the one who cried and got upset. And when she got upset, I'm like, oh, maybe I should have more feelings about this. You guys ever had that experience? It's mom and dad who get upset, not you so much, because they have a different perspective on things. So, you know, I could look at that incident. I didn't even think about I didn't think about the theological ramifications of that event at the time, right? I just like, trippy thing, weird. But now, of course, it's all over the media. It's like a bullet whizzes past, and then you get theological. People are getting theological about this sort of thing now, right? It was the will of God that bullet didn't hit a certain person. Was it the will of God that the bullet passed my ear, passed by me and didn't kill me, right? Was that the will of God? Or was God just a bad shot? You know, you could ask that question too. What's God got to do with it, if anything, right? And that's, people talk about this, not thinking too hard about the other side of it. It's like, what about the 120 people a day who were killed by gun violence in this country? Was it the will of God that they should suffer that fate? So you start asking these questions and it takes you down rabbit holes, right? You know, I wish I had known my father-in-law, who by every account I have heard was a marvelous, wonderful, devout, and caring man. Hank Selhorst. And he was killed by an act of random gun violence in Baltimore in 1974, leaving behind 13 children, right? Was that the will of God? You gotta wonder, well, that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. Well, you know, now I'm at a certain point in my life where I'm a little more aware of my mortality. And I think about how I want to live my life and the rest of my days. And, you know, as Mary Oliver said, you know, what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life, right? A worthy question to ask at any age, So, you know, then there's a question of like planning, right? There's a book that came out years ago by Rick Warren. He wrote a book called The Purpose-Driven Life. He was a fundamentalist preacher in Orange County, Saddleback Church. The gist of it was, God has a plan for your life. The will of God amounts to a plan for your life. Your job is to pay attention to that plan, and live it out. Of course, the trouble with this is that how do you know what that plan is? You know, the Bible doesn't tell you what your plan is for your life. It's just not there. You know, there's a lot of wisdom and depth and richness there, of course, but there's no specific plan in it for your specific life. And then, if you think you're relying on some kind of revelation about what the plan is for your life, that's a problem too, because how do you know it's divine plan versus just you making up a plan, right? You deciding what you want to do rather than God. So it's just really hard to make any sense of this idea when you think critically about it. Also, you can make all the plans in the world, but then, funny thing, things change, don't they? Zigzags, U-turns you have to make just because of what's going on in your life, right? So what's the will of God have to do with that? You know, there's used to be a place called the Soviet Union. Remember that thing? I went there actually in 1981, and we were supposed to think in America that it was the evil empire, and that these were scary people that were trying to take over the world. Well, I went over there, and the first thing I saw is like, these guys are, you know, lucky to, you know, to get anything done. I mean, it was just a shambolic country in 100 ways. We have someone here who knows about living under communism, how messy it was. It just didn't work, you know. And they had a thing in the Soviet Union called the 5-year plan, right? The whole economy was planned ahead of time. We're going to produce so much steel, and so many hectares of land are going to be tilled to raise wheat, etc. All planned out. Well, that was okay for a while they were still, you know, industrializing. But then when it came to trying to run a consumer economy, the whole thing hit the wall, right? It's like, because it's just impossible to have a 5-year plan for what consumers want, right? Because today they want this kind of jeans, and tomorrow they want a different kind of jeans, and oh, by the way, there were no skateboards in the Soviet Union. Can you imagine that? None. Actually, it was an exchange thing with the United Church of Christ that brought me there, and then we brought Soviet people here. And I wound up taking a KGB agent, right? Soviet secret police guy. We all knew perfectly well. He didn't, you know, he said he was just working for the diplomatic corps. We knew he was KGB, it was obvious. Anyway, he's a delightful guy, but he was KGB. Anyway, so I'm talking to him when he was here, and I go, you know, your son is going to need something, you know, want to bring something back from Sesha, the USA, Sesha. So I go, what do you think your son wants? He goes, he wants skateboard. I go, Oleg, we're going to go get a skateboard now. So here I am with this big Russian guy wearing Soviet clothes. Like I say, the clothes were bad because it was a planned economy. You know, very dowdy and out of date. He was like wearing 1950s clothes in 1980, right? Anyway, I take this big Soviet guy. I'm taking a KGB agent to a skateboard store in Burklo. Can you imagine this? So it was very fun. Anyway, here's this big dude with a suit, you know, suit and tie and everything, trying to balance himself on a skateboard. It was frickin' hilarious. It was hilarious. But he and I got to be pretty friendly, and he let me know later that his son was very happy with skateboard. Very happy. So it wasn't Reagan and the arms race with the Soviet Union that brought it down. It was skateboards and Levi's and shoes and stuff like that. Planning doesn't work too well for a lot of things, right? Because things change, right? And then here you are. So your own plans are messy. So, you know, it appears that God's plans, if God has any, are just as messy. So, One of the things that I cherish about the memory of my father-in-law, who I never met, is that he went to Jesuit seminary, right? He was planning to be a priest. Long story short, he dropped out and decided to be Catholic in a different way and had 13 children, right? So at some point, the family found his master's thesis from Catholic seminary, and they couldn't make any sense of it at all. And they figured, well, Jim will know what this is about, so they gave it to me to interpret back to them, because none of them studied theology. Anyway, the topic was concursus, which is the Catholic study of the relationship between the will of God and the will of humans. And what I found fascinating, revelatory in Hank's thesis, was that the Catholic Church never figured out concursus. They never came up with a doctrine of concursus that was definitive from the church. Like, this is our stand on concursus. And I just thought that was pretty interesting in itself. And then after reading it, I go, you know, the reason that they couldn't figure it out is because it can't be figured out, right? It's just the way, it's a mystery. Neither a joyful nor a sorrowful mystery, as the Catholics like to say, right? It's just mysterious. So I'm just going to put it right out there. God does not have a plan for your life. God does not have a plan for your life. Thank God, right? Because otherwise, you would be wearing Soviet eyewear. You know, if you wear glasses, they'd be pretty ugly glasses. The kind of glasses that Oleg wore when he was riding the skateboard. God does not have a plan for your life. This is a good thing. You get to figure it out. We're guided not by God's will and plan for our life in terms of specific stuff that we're supposed to be doing. We're rather guided by being attracted to the love that is God, the compassion that is God. It's like our North Star. We go toward it, and that's our guidance. And sometimes to get there, you got to go this way, right? And sometimes to get there, you got to go this way because there's, you know, stuff going on. You have to adjust. You might have a plan, but it's going to change, probably. Our lives are not divinely purpose-driven. They are divinely attracted towards something higher, something beyond us, something that we can practice. We'll never get it perfect, and that is the love of God, divine love. My favorite poet, Antonio Machado, Spanish poet of the mid-20th century, said, "Caminante no hay camino, se hace el camino por andar." Traveler, there is no road. We make the road by walking. And he went on to say, and when you look back, you see the path that you will never travel again. There is no road, only a ship's wake on the sea. Yeah. So we get to look back and see what our path was like. Looking back, we can see our path. But looking forward, all we got is headlights that can only see, you know, aim so far. But, you know, the headlights of love will guide us where we need to go. Let love be our headlights as we plunge into the unknown on a path that we make by walking. A while back, I came up with this proverb, wrote this down. Wandering, I stumbled upon my purpose. Adrift, I made port. Unbidden, love arrived. Asleep, I learned my lesson. In silence, notes danced across my score. Dreaming, my problems solved themselves. So let us go with love's flow and be driven by its only purpose, which is itself. Amen.